Geico presents Our Town, Season 2, a 30-minute podcast produced by Best Bart Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks. Geico, 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance. Now, here's your host, Andy Ockershausen.
This is Andy Ockershausen. This is Our Town, and I have a distinct pleasure to introduce our next guest. My wife feels that he's tall, dark, and handsome. We know about the dark. And he's talented, and he's homegrown right here in our town. There are certain people in this world that I grew up with, and you could say a name like Sonny, like Tiger. You know who they're talking about. Frank, the singer, and then there's JB. There's only one JB in my life, and I've been around a long time. JB graduated from Harvard. I want to find out how he got into Harvard.
Barry
He worked at Xerox. I didn't know you worked for Eastman Kodak, two great American corporations.
Mm-hmm.
You got his start in broadcasting right here in Washington, D.C., Bullets. He had the best job in sports, hosting the NFL Today, Thursday Night Football, NFL pregame, the best networks, CBS and Fox. He was a standout on the basketball court as well as on the TV set. That's a great line. My friend, James Brown.
Andy.
JB.
Since your wife has accurately described me as being dark as well, too dark to blush as I listen to all of that,
but you're handsome, JB, in spite of the beard.
Please, are you kidding me? Hey, my grandkids must have told you to say that, all right? And I've got 4 of them now, but I will get to that point. Yeah. How about that?
But your family is from Washington.
Native Washingtonians.
Your mom and dad were born here? They grew up here?
Dad grew up in Georgetown.
Wow.
Was very good. Knew Petey Green. Of course, we know that venerable name in Washington circles. And so Petey Green was the one who actually got me involved in television.
Is that right?
I'll get to that. Mom actually was born in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Oh.
And went to Chicago and then came to Washington where she and my dad met. Hey, Andy, talk about dusting off cobwebs. I looked at my birth certificate, which of course had me described back in the day as they did, colored, and I was born at Gallagher Hospital. I didn't even know the Gallinger. Thank you. Okay, thank you. See, thank you very much.
Very
Gallinger.
Well.
Was that the forerunner to the
DC
women's
jail.
hospital?
You know where the jail is?
Yep.
Gallinger was over there.
I'm sorry I asked you about
Eastern
that.
High School?
I'm sorry I asked you about that.
That's his neighborhood.
JB, Eastern High School and the D.C. jail and Gallinger were all together.
Somehow, I know I can't ask this part of the conversation to be cut out, but hey, you know.
That was Andy's neighborhood.
Was it really?
Yeah,
See, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Native Washingtonian. But I grew up in Southeast D.C. over near the old Washington Star building, right in the shadows of the Navy Yard. I went to elementary school for the first couple years there at Van Ness Elementary. And then when my parents, God bless them, moved over to Northeast D.C. in the North Michigan Park area, that's where I grew up the majority of my life. I went to Bunker Hill Elementary, Backus Junior High School.
Very fine school in those days,
Absolutely, better believe it.
Bunker
and was
Hill.
in the McKinley Technical Zone to go to high school there when some coach by the name of Morgan Wooten actually asked me to come play baseball.
Is that right?
At DeMatha.
I didn't even know DeMatha had a baseball team.
They did. He actually was interested in me coming over there to play baseball for one of my most favorite teachers of all time, Buck Offit, who was our English teacher. So anyway, that's
but your experience with DeMatha, of course, made you one way or the other. DeMatha did so much for you, JB, but Morgan saw something, and he enlisted you to the school and to come and help his program, correct?
He did. And prior to that, where I probably got as good a foundation and footing as any was at Bertie Backus Junior High School, which was a new school at the time. And a gentleman just asked me the other day, he was talking to myself and my coworker, Elizabeth Calhoun, about my favorite teacher. And I stopped to think about it, and I actually rolled back to middle school, junior high school, and it was a teacher by the name of Mrs. French, who really had me believing in myself because she believed in me. Because back then, you remember there was a track system. So let me tell you one down part of my experience in the D.C. public schools, elementary school. I always wanted to be a doctor. I remember getting a book
That's amazing.
out of the library. It was entitled "So You Want to Be a Doctor," because I believed in helping people. I had that real, and still do.
Was there ever a doctor in your family? Your mom or dad's family?
None. I just wanted to be.
Right.
Mom and dad always stressed academic excellence. They saw that as the key to success in the game of life. They were the ones who established that foundation. So I said, you know what? I can be anything I want. I want to be a doctor. But there was a teacher, and it was a sign of the times, as you well know.
They were rough times.
They were, and she happened to be a Caucasian lady who did not have much experience in dealing with children of color. And she said, you know what? Kids like you don't really do well in the math and sciences. You probably ought to consider another profession. And it crushed me. And talk about poor self-esteem. And back then, you remember that we had track systems in school. When we went to middle, junior high school.
Right track.
You know, so 7th grade, 7-1 was the honors track, 7-2, and so forth. I was in 7-7.
You're down.
The last track, 7-7. But this lady, Mrs. French, and a number of the teachers there really did encourage me, Mr. Shackelford and all. They encouraged me strongly, such that when Morgan expressed an interest in me coming to DeMatha, my self-esteem was built up a bit more to think that I could do the job there, and that Mom and Dad had really stressed that foundation of success, and Morgan just built upon that.
Well, Morgan also, he was so involved. He was still teaching then.
Yes, he was. History. World history.
He was a teacher.
Absolutely. And an excellent one at that.
Well, everything about that man, you know, I knew him real well through Joey Gallagher and all that.
Talk about a relationship,
They
boy.
grew up together, as you know, and you were part of Morgan's success, obviously. But you had a long line of great players before you. Like, Sid Catlett was the first
Heavens,
one,
yes. DeMatha probably was put on the map. And actually, back in the mid-50s, maybe, Andy, early 50s, there was, what was his name? Oh, my gosh. Was it Ernie Cage?
There was an Ernie Cage, absolutely.
Who was one of Morgan's early great ball players. But that which put high school basketball on the map, 1965, DeMatha played Power Memorial from Coalfield House. Packed them in. Lou Alcindor was the big star for Power Memorial.
I was at that game.
12,500 packed into that stadium on a snowy night. And I know DeMatha,
the old stadium.
Coalfield House. DeMatha lost to Power Memorial the first year in that matchup. They set the second matchup for the following year. Jam-packed. And it was Mr. John Moylan, our principal, who was telling Morgan, making a suggestion as to how to prepare for the 7'1" Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then known as Lou Alcindor, with a tennis racket, because Mr. Moylan was a big tennis player. Put your center in the middle with the tennis racket so the guys could get accustomed to shooting over the tennis racket. They did. DeMatha goes on to beat Power Memorial by 1 point.
Incredible story.
Biggest high school game in the country, put high school basketball on the map.
It started, and then after that, I think Morgan now has the record of the most high school wins, correct, as a coach?
He certainly did a number of years ago, because he's the first coach at the high school level to go into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame expressly, solely for what he did at the high school level.
High school level.
So Morgan
he
was
never
the one
went beyond. He could have gone beyond that. But
absolutely. Had a couple of offers, as you well know.
He was dedicated to he said, my life is DeMatha, and he proved it. One of the things, JB, I talk to young people about, and Morgan was a living example. When you go to school, don't study broadcasting. Don't study. Get history. Find out about history. Find out about geography. Find out about the world.
Absolutely.
Young people get into broadcasting, but no history.
Andy,
Morgan
I have found that out to be the truth, because broadcasting is all about being as well-rounded as possible, to have conversations in as many different circles as possible. So if you've got that broad breadth of understanding and education, it makes you that much more valuable. Heavens, who would have thunk it that I would also be engaged in doing news for CBS News? But that's the point of just being curious and having that education, which is what a good collegiate education will give you, a good dictionary degree, to be as broad-based as possible. Does that not make sense, Andy?
Absolutely. Well, you know, you were a great high school, but why Harvard? I mean, I heard about that at the time. I was an observer of the high school basketball scene. And I said, why wouldn't he go to Notre Dame or Georgetown? Why go to Harvard?
And those were schools on the docket.
I know that.
The first school I went to visit was St. Bonaventure. Big Bob Lanier. Oh, talk about cold weather. Big Bob Lanier was up there. Bob Lanier was like 6'11". Now,
and he had size 18 shoes, didn't he?
Hey, Andy and Mrs. Ockershausen, I need to go measure his feet because people were saying he wore a size 19. Look, I may be wrong, but I went to his dormitory. I saw the shoe. Now, I wasn't necessarily the best student in physics, but I understand a little bit. If you put that much weight in some leather, when you take your feet out, the ends are going to buckle up. And that's what happened to his shoes. He wore a size 22.
Enormous
and the standard joke on campus is that when he went over to the gymnasium, his feet would arrive a half hour before his body did. So that was Big Bob Lanier.
That's a great Lanier
My
story.
second visit was to Notre Dame. Sid Catlett was there, the great DeMatha player.
Was he on the staff there?
No, Sid Catlett was actually playing because...
Oh, he was?
Yeah, they were, I guess, they graduated the year I came in as a freshman at DeMatha.
I knew that.
So Sid Catlett was there at Notre Dame. Austin Carr, the outstanding, phenomenal shooter from Mackin High School, and Collis Jones from St. John's High School, and Bob Whitmore from DeMatha. So you had 4 D.C. guys that Mr. Collins, see, that's why I can't call your wife by her first name. When I grew up in that era, you called everybody by their last name. I don't even know what Mr. Collins' last name, first name was. He was a big alum from St. John's and Notre Dame, and worked really hard. And I really was very interested in Notre Dame. But Mom and Dad always drove home. It's the academic foundation that is going to be the precursor for success in the game of life. KB. So look, Bill Bradley was the gentleman I saw play on TV for Princeton. And I said to myself, now, if he could do it with Princeton, and we had Chris Tomford and the Hummer brothers from one of the Hummer twins from Virginia. Thank you very much.
And Pete
when
Carroll.
I saw them, so they were there, and I'm thinking, hey, wait a minute, it can be done to marry academics and athletics. And I was hoping I would get a letter from Princeton.
They didn't write you?
The first letter I saw on Morgan Wooten's desk was from Harvard, and I said, if I can get in there, that's where I'm going. And it worked out. And even though there was a big to-do made in the papers.
They did recruit you then.
Well, they did. And while there was a big to-do made about Senator Ted Kennedy, God bless him, and understandably so, talking to me, having a visit up on Capitol Hill, and people thought that's what swayed me from the other final choice that I had, which was North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where Dean Smith was a coach. It was really 2 Washington alums who had the most influence on me going to school there. Clifford Alexander, former Secretary of the Army,
my pal,
in the Carter administration, and EEOC chairman, White House fellow, the whole 9 yards.
He's everything.
Worked with President Lyndon Johnson, and Barrett Lindy, a very successful developer builder in town,
great guy,
who helped me to understand they took the education and applied it successfully in the game of life and did well. I was more impressed with those 2 alums, an African American and Jewish developer,
Jewish builder,
very good friends. That's why I went to school there.
Well, you know, Cliff did a TV show. I was instrumental
That's
in
right.
coming to Channel 7.
Of course, you knew that. Black on White was his program.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And his wife,
Adele,
or his secretary, or somebody is what's the great?
Janet Hill.
Yeah,
his partner with
Grant's,
Alexander
Grant's mother,
Grant Hill, and the wife of Calvin Hill, the former great Dallas Cowboy.
All these dots come together, kid. That's great, isn't it?
Something?
Because of Washington D.C. and your position in the community. So you go to Harvard, you study, you graduate as a all Ivy League, as 3 years captain of the team. Why in the world would you go to Xerox? Did they recruit you?
So here's the backstory to that. Having played for Morgan Wooten, one of the finest coaches per Red Auerbach, God bless him, and per John Wooden of UCLA fame, God bless him as well, they said Morgan Wooten was the finest coach on any level. Morgan was a master motivator. He never uttered a profanity in trying to motivate his players. Much like my good friend, Coach Tony Dungy, who won the Super Bowl as coach of the Indianapolis Colts.
Never raised his voice even.
Never engaged in profanity-laced tirades to encourage the players. Morgan modeled it by example. When I went to Harvard, I lost track of what one of Morgan's great lessons were. There's no such thing as standing still. You're either getting better as a player and in the game of life, or you're regressing. There's no neutral. Andy and Mrs. Ockershausen, I did not work as hard to stay on top as I did to get to the top. I was still drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. Pete Maravich, God bless him, we were great friends when I was at Atlanta. And he said, man, you got what it takes. You're going to make this team. 2-3 days later, the coach, Cotton Fitzsimmons, called me to his room, the proverbial, you're cut from the team. I was crushed.
You got to be crushed.
Crushed, because I knew I had the talent to do it. But Andy, when I look back on it, there's a verse in the Bible that says, why be concerned about the speck in your brother's eye when there's a plank in your own eye? And if you point a finger of blame at somebody, there are 3 pointing right back at you. Well, it was on me. I didn't work as hard to stay. And I vowed in the game of life I would never let an opportunity pass me by that I didn't work hard to capitalize on the opportunity.
You got into camp. That's something else.
Oh, I got into camp there. Was one of the last cut by the Hawks. The following year, Red Auerbach had me up at Boston, and one of the last guys cut there, and he says, JB, you've got the talent. You need to polish the skills. Why don't you go overseas and play for a year and come back? But I said, what was the purpose of going to a great school to get ready for the game of life if I'm going to kind of hang around on the fringes? Yeah. And that's what I did. So Xerox was the closest thing to playing athletics, because your success was predicated upon what you did. And you can get great immediate teaching, gratification. Right? The best training in corporate America at that time. Better believe it. The Xerox Training Center, the old professional selling skills that they taught us, which essentially underscored the importance of being a good listener to what a customer is saying, and then structuring your presentation and proposal with the right product matched to what their needs are, as opposed to talking up a storm like I'm doing right now.
That's how you learn it, baby. Nothing better than zero. Everybody who went to that school is now successful. Mm-hmm. This is Our Town, Andy Ockershausen. We're talking to JB.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million. What color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to Our Town.
This is Our Town, Andy Ockershausen, talking to JB, that I recall saying to him when he was working for Xerox, JB, you have a great voice. Do you ever consider being in radio? I should have said you have a face for radio, but I didn't.
Don't worry, I still get told that today.
But we had a disc jockey here named Felix Grant, who had a wonderful, wonderful voice, and I used him as a model. I said, JB, you could do jazz as well as anybody I've ever heard. But he didn't want it. He wanted to be in television. And then he went over to Channel 9.
Interesting when you bring that up too, Andy, because it was Petey Green who had, of course, a radio show and I believe a TV show, both by the same name, Petey Green's Washington.
Oh, it's
when I got cut by the Atlanta Hawks, I came home. Petey had me on his show to talk about making the adjustment from loving basketball and doing well at the high school level, but now orienting your focus to being successful in the game of life. We had a great show. And then he said, you know what, there's an opening for the Washington Bullets broadcast team. Mike Reardon, who was a guard, opened up a restaurant in Annapolis, and so there's a vacancy. I said, I've never done TV before. And Petey Green, in his usual imitable style,
why not?
Said, boy, wait a minute. Didn't you go to college? I said, well, yes. What does that mean? He said, that means you got a good dictionary degree. Put your butt on over there and put your name on the list. Go interview for the job.
Sounds like Petey.
That was Petey. So I went and auditioned for the job. But then this is where the Xerox training came into play. They said, we want you to simulate a halftime interview for one of the games and just kind of, do a mock halftime interview and discussion, the whole 9 yards. They figured I knew basketball. Well, the star on the team at that time was Phil Chenier, who I played against in college. I said, hey, Phil, it's on a Tuesday, it's your day off. Come with me over to WDCA TV and let's do the audition. Well, they were shocked that, first of all, I brought the team star in and we simulated a halftime interview and I got the job. But believe me, I had to learn on the job, but folks really bore with me. And Andy, again, learning from models like you, I was hungry. I said I would never let an opportunity pass me by that
You
I didn't
learned
work
that
hard for.
from your Hawks experience.
I worked hard to understand the mechanics of being a good broadcaster, to play off of the play-by-play guy, to understand and do your homework because I wanted it badly. And the rest, was good. Because the second job was with Black Entertainment Television when Bob Johnson created BET, and I did black college sports for them, doing basketball and later on football as well with them. So that's how it started. Abe Poland, God bless him, gave me my first job in television with the Washington Bullets, and then Black Entertainment Television. I did some work for Eddie Einhorn and USA Network, and just continue to stair step my way up.
He was a big man in Navy at one time,
Absolutely.
We used to do Navy broadcast on WML. Eddie was helpful with that. But you're talking about the transition. You did Channel 9. Channel 9 was a big part of your life too, correct? They let you
know
do
everything.
The sports.
You know everything. Wow.
Well, because I was there. You and Sonny used to do sports. I said, well, Sonny doesn't know anything about broadcasting.
But Sonny was America's guest, though. You know that, so yeah.
Oh, he was. Like I said, but that's all you had to say was Sonny.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And you have that reputation now. You grew with it, JB.
Marty Aronoff was the producer who was instrumental in getting me an opportunity to meet with the then news director of Mrs. Betty Endicott
at Channel 5.
And then she moved over to Channel 9. Sandra Butler Jones was another key player in my career.
Great. I knew her very well.
Two strong women who had a hand, and Sandra Butler Jones wound up telling another woman by the name of Samara Martin Ewing now, who still is at Channel 9. She said, you know what, we got this kid, James Brown. We think he's got some talent. Make him a broadcaster. Boy, did I call Samara to pull her hair out, because I was too detailed on things, going out logging high school football games on a Saturday in the rain. I came back with 9 pages of transcript for a 1-minute report on a public affairs program. But she pulled her hair out, showing me how to thin that down, to give the most salient points. And you know what? I owe a lot to those folks, to the family over at Channel 9, WUSA TV here in Washington, because they gave me my opportunity. Ron Townsend was a general manager then.
Know him very well.
But the group that was over there that really bore with me, it was Gordon Peterson, it was Frank Herzog, it was Maureen Bunyan, it was Glenn Brenner, it was Maureen Bunyan, it was
Weatherman,
the Weatherman Gordon, it was Gordon Barnes, and it was Gordon Barnes, and Gordon Peterson, of course, was the anchor. It was a wonderful,
what a cast
star.
Of characters.
Oh my gosh, they were
all
awesome.
Those talented people left. Yeah, they're talented females too. They had, right?
Absolutely, early on in the day. And who was the guy who really oversaw that?
Ernie Bauer.
Ernie worked for our big boss,
Snyder.
Thank you. Look at you.
I knew Jim.
I told you before I came in here, Andy, your memory is far better than mine. Thank you.
I lived it with you. Jim Snyder was a great news director.
He hired all of these great people. He had a roster. Channel 9.
Davy Marlon
Jones. Are you kidding
Characters.
me? Heavens, yes. Just some great names. So I learned under and with the best there.
Exactly.
And they really bore with me. So it was wonderful. I learned an awful lot about Glenn Brenner, who never, ever took a broadcast lightly. He always worked to make certain that he was on top of things, that he was fresh. He was and he and George Michael, as you all recall, talk about a 1-2 choice here in Washington, D.C., or a 1-1A, if you will. George gave you the meat and potatoes. He had all the satellites bringing in video from around the world. Glenn Brenner was like the every man, every woman's broadcaster, because he would make it fun. I remember when the 7'7" Dinka tribesman played for the Washington Bullets, Manute Bol. And Glenn, when he came to town, Glenn says, well, he's like a human windshield washer, a windshield wiper, who's coming to town. I mean, but he brought everybody in to the fold, because of his humor.
I mentioned Siegel to you. I'll give you a quick Siegel story. I was having lunch with him and Duke Zeberts, and Duke wasn't there, but Duke then came in and said, Abe Poland's coming in for lunch. He'd bring in Manute Bol with him. Siegel said, point him out to me. I'd like to...
Point him out to me, please.
7-7.
Did he dump so his head didn't hit the ceiling? Are you kidding me? Absolutely.
Siegel also told me if Washington ever gets a baseball team, Bowie Kuhn said it's going to be the Lerners, and they love families taking team, and he was right.
Wow.
Said people know things.
Doesn't that speak back to the way things were back in the day, family owned in that regard?
Absolutely.
And that's how we got involved, because I was basically an advisor on the advisory council or team, if you will, to the learners. But I met them through another developer family, Harlan Cardozo, Mike and Harlan Cardozo, part of the Landau family.
Nate Landau.
Nate Landau, yes, indeed. And also the other neighbors, Sonny and Tina Small, part of Renaissance developers. So all these folks had introduced me to the learners, and they asked me to become involved. So Andy, and when they said you had to shell out some money, so the extent of my investment was probably akin to per diem for them, But hey, low six figures was still pretty stiff for me, But
baby, that's great to have you.
It's been wonderful to be involved because I grew up about 5 blocks away from where the stadium is now.
Wow!
Certainly, this is hometown for me, and I wanted to see it be, if you will, an attraction for all of the city and the DMV. So I'm thrilled to be a part of this, and the learners have brought a consistent winner to town.
They've done a great job. We're going to be right back and talk about our favorite town and our town and James Brown and JB and this is Andy Ockershausen and this is our town.
Maybe your kids are about to graduate from college or even get their graduate degree. Or you're looking forward to retirement, finally. Don't go another day without getting your legal house in order. This is attorney Mike Collins. Let me show you how to get a basic estate plan in place that will protect you and your loved ones in the years ahead with our trademarked Reservoir Trust. All I ask is 2 hours of your time. Check the mail for your special invitation and register now at MikeCollins.com. I'll even waive the tuition. That's MikeCollins.com.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell everybody about our newest restaurant over off New York Avenue. It's called Ivy City Smokehouse, 1356 Oakey Street Northeast, right next to the Heck Company warehouse. It is terrific, and we have the only seafood smoker in the District of Columbia. So when you go to your grocery stores or your delis, ask for Ivy City products. 202-529-3300 or ivycitysmokehouse.com.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
This is Andy Ockershausen, Our Town. I'm talking to JB about his career at Channel 9, which I think launched him along with Fox, JB. Because that's where I used to watch you and heard about you and listen to games and so forth. I knew all the guys you were. You were bound to be a star. There was no doubt in anybody's mind. And then you went to CBS Sports. That was quite an accomplishment. CBS was the crown jewel of broadcasting at one time.
Wow. First of all, before I answer that and speak to that, can I just say I talked about how you have been such a role model, modeling excellence for all of us. Perhaps the best thing that can be said about you right now is that you've got your boss sitting on your right side, Janice Ockershausen. Hey, as I've learned, I'm involved in the ministry, and hey, there is a scripture. Elizabeth has heard it, my coworker, 250 times. My wife actually prefers that I not reference it because she didn't want people thinking that was her. In the Bible, in the book of Proverbs, chapter 21, the subtitle, Andy, is Instructions for Life. There are 2 of the 21, I believe, verses in there that say, it is better for a man to occupy the corner of a rooftop than to be in a house with an angry woman. 21:19 says, it's better for a man to be in the wilderness than in a wide house with a brawling and contentious woman. The translation, if mama ain't happy,
ain't nobody happy, baby.
So to have Janice here is awesome. Hey, so CBS came about as a result of doing some weekend games with Frank Herzog, basketball.
With Frank?
With Frank. When the Washington Bullets experience gave me the comfort level that I could articulate the game because I was passionate about it anyway, having played it. And when CBS got the NCAA tournament contract in 1982, the first round, when they've got like a zillion games, they needed extra announcers. Frank Herzog, of course, was the voice of the Washington football team here, for sure.
Before that, he was a great basketball announcer.
Yes.
The first time I heard him.
I love this. I have to say this carefully. I was the color commentator for the Washington Bullets. I'll never forget, one guy introduced me at a banquet. He says, and we'd like to introduce James Brown, the colored commentator for the Washington Bullets. And he was so embarrassed, and the people laughing. So I got up and tried to take it, add a little levity. I said, well, technically you're correct, so it's all good. So I was Frank's analyst with the Washington Bullets for a year or two. I learned a lot from Frank Herzog, Jim
he did
Carvelis.
Good basketball than anybody I ever heard.
Yep.
When he did the championship series, that's when we hired him to do Redskin football because he was so good. He really was good.
Excellent.
He didn't want to leave, you know.
I know.
But he's very happy now. He's living down in Carolina. He was our first guest on Our Town because he was here.
Good for you.
We
See,
put him
Andy,
on
that
air.
speaks volumes about you. That speaks volumes about you.
Herzog.
I mean, he's an icon here. He's a natural resource here.
We grew up with Frank Herzog. Correct?
Understood. And I imitated him when I got to do play-by-play for football with CBS. Frank Herzog's imprint on me was indelible. I need to give credit to another Washingtonian who was very helpful because we both were competing for the job for play-by-play with the Washington Bullets when that vacancy came about, because I did it for a short period of time with Glenn Harris. And Glenn Harris is a fixture here in Washington, D.C. Nobody knows more about Washington sports than Glenn Harris.
Anacostia boy, too.
Yes, Anacostia. And when I got the job, clearly disappointed was Glenn for sure. But to show you what kind of guy he was, Andy, he took out his player board. He called me over to Anacostia. We sat out there on the back porch of the school, and he walked me through all of the mechanics of what I need to understand about being an excellent play-by-play guy. I am indebted to Glenn Harris. Shows you how big a man. So I'm so happy to see recently Joe Yasharoff, one of my former producers at Channel 5, we endorsed him to get the Silver Circle Award, I believe it was called.
Glenn just got it, too. We were there. Janice and I were there. Ernie Bauer got the Gold Award.
So, and Glenn deserved that. But anyway, so CBS, that's what happened. I got my opportunity to do that. So when CBS saw me do a Big East game that was televised in New York, St. John's and Georgetown. And I was so excited about that game because this represented a big opportunity for me. And I was working with a big-time announcer. She's heard the story a zillion times before as well. And the announcer, who's still in the business, big name, I was well prepared for the game. And Georgetown was trailing St. John's. They were down by 6 with about 30 seconds left in the game. And I said, hey, Georgetown just put in player X. And I had done my homework. What a great player he is. As a matter of fact, he's a great street player. The announcer says, JB, did you say street or streak? And I'm thinking, why is he going to embarrass me? Now, I could have reacted stereotypically and pulled out my switchblade, but I didn't do that because I'd done my homework. I said, well, you know what? Either one of those adjectives are appropriate for this player because he honed his skills on the streets of Washington, D.C. playing pickup basketball, but he's also a great streak shooter. His nickname is Microwave, and he can come in and put Georgetown back in the game in a New York minute. And a New York minute, by the way, is 32 seconds. So I said, he got in the game, and he did exactly that. So I learned put him back in the game, and then they went on to win the game.
They beat
so CBS saw that broadcast and asked me if I would be one of their extra announcers during the NCAA tournament paired with Frank Herzog. And as a result of doing that game, one of the 4 executive producers at CBS said, wow, let's have him do some NBA games, which, of course, I've been doing anyway. So that's how I got my foot in the door. And then what he said, if you're looking to make a career out of this, you need to make certain that you are broadly prepared to be a studio host, as an anchor, to do play-by-play, to be a street reporter. Make sure you understand all of what's necessary so that you've got the skills to weather the storm, because any big-name player who retires, they're going to go after him to be the analyst, because I was an analyst at that time.
Your job.
Ted Shaker was the executive producer who gave me that excellent lesson, so I learned that. And my first football game, yes, he was. My first football game that he had me do, I didn't play football despite the size and girth that everybody sees on the air, okay? You know, I mean, you knew me as a skinny kid.
Absolutely.
My first football game, it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting the Atlanta Falcons. And my producer said, James, Ted Shaker, just call it clean game. Don't get fancy. Just stay straight. It's all good. I go through the first half. I'm thinking, man, football's not that difficult. I got complacent. So come up the second half, I said, okay, Steve DeBerg's the quarterback. He takes a snap, drops back, delayed handoff to James Wilder, the running back. He's at the 40. He's got daylight. He's at the 45. He's at the 50. Folks, he's heading for pay dirt. He's at the 55. He's finally tackled at the 60-yard line. My producer gets in my ear. He says, JB, there's no such thing as a 60-yard line. Go to commercial. Now I'm all shook up because he told me, don't ever look at the stadium time clock because it could be wrong. Look at the TV clock. We'll have it right. I was shook up. I looked at the stadium clock. I said, well, with 8 minutes and 99 seconds left in the third period of play, we'll be right back. 8:99. So we come back. Thank goodness I was working with a Harvard alum who played football named Dan Jickets, played briefly with the Chicago Bears. He covered for me nicely. He said, well, for those of you who heard JB say 8 minutes and 99 seconds as he went to commercial break, he was just trying to test your math skills and see if he could make the conversion to realize that was 9 minutes and 39 seconds left in the third period of play. But even having made those mistakes, thank God the game was only being televised to the TV truck and the local Piggly Wiggly on the corner down the street. So I weathered that storm. Yeah,
it wasn't America's game.
Hey, but not nearly as bad as when at Fox, the boss there, after a successful first season of being a co-host with Terry Bradshaw for the Fox NFL Sunday show, they were looking to acquire more inventory, and they said, well, should we get hockey or should we get NASCAR? Well, they wound up getting hockey at first, and our boss, David Hill, brilliant Aussie, had done all the studying. He says, you know what? Hockey has a tremendous upside. Why don't we get that? And he says, and they're looking to try to make it more diverse. JB, why don't you host hockey? I'm like, excuse me? He says, why don't you host hockey? I know nothing about hockey. He says, you've got time to study. So all summer long, I'm studying these names to make sure I don't butcher up the names. So not only am I introduced to the national press, and the folks are kind of looking at me with a raised eyebrow and asking questions. JB, you know what icing is? So I explain what icing is. JB, excuse me, sir, do you know what a two-line pass is? I explain what a two-line pass is. Third guy, JB, do you know how they substitute in hockey? I said, yes, line shifts. I said, fellas, look, why don't we just take the veneer off the questions? I know what you're asking, so let me just be clear. No, hockey wasn't big in my neighborhood. And I understand the only thing I have in common with the sport is the color of the puck. But I promise you I'll be an excellent addition because I will be passionate about it. Fast forward to the Stanley Cup final in New Jersey. In the stands, there are a bunch of preteen white kids standing there, and they've got this big sign up. They're saying, James Brown, Godfather of Gold. I knew I had made it. I've got that sign in my office on the wall now, Godfather of Gold. Anyway.
JB, what a career.
Oh, it's been interesting, yeah.
See, it's so much more than people know about you. That's the whole idea of our town. I found out so many things about you that I had known, but you bring them back to me. That's the reason we're doing our town.
But to the point that you make, I want it to be, when you talked about the kid about in school, history and English and social studies, the producer said, JB, become as versatile as possible. So I did water polo, I did mountain climbing, I covered the Tour de France, or Tour de France, if you will. I did all those things so that I wouldn't be colonized, if you will, just in one area, so that I could do anything and have a comfort level with it. Hey, I'm sitting up here interviewing Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding, here I am like 6'5", and I got these two diminutive ladies, boy, and if stairs could cut, you could, the stairs at each other was so thick, it was palpable, you could cut it, but that was fascinating.
There was a little blood on the water for those two.
Yes.
We saw Nancy on Dancing with the Stars. She married Solomon that worked for Donald Dell.
That's right, the agent. How about that?
How about the small? See, it all comes together, JB, because of you. Now, do they send you on the road anymore other than your weekends? Are you doing anything during the week?
So, you know what, and Andy, I'm sure you can relate to this as well, too. I am truly thankful that the good Lord has blessed me. I talked about you and sustained excellence to have been at this because I've always aimed, going back to when I was cut by the Hawks, to never, ever get complacent again. And I could rightfully be accused of being a workaholic. But I wanted to, and I was talking with one of your colleagues here. I'm having a blast at it. It's fun, and I think the passion is showing through. So I try to be as widely varied in what I do, and to be doing news as well, contributing to 60 Minutes and CBS This Morning and the evening news, or substitute anchoring whenever they call. It's been a blast. So the excitement is still there, and I go back to the lesson learned from Glenn Brenner, who said, always make it fun. Sonny Jurgensen said, as it relates to football players and retiring, let them drag you off the field, So just having a good time at it. And I hope as long as that enthusiasm is there, and clearly I'm preparing for the next phase in terms of the things that I do with a production company that's, a fledgling production company, again, broadening the horizons in the world of news, because there's that interest as well too. All of that is fun, but also trying to pour into young people as well, like you do.
Well, just your background at Harvard and all the things that you have done, it's incredible, JB. You still have you get up every day looking forward to it, don't you, baby?
I am extremely excited about it each and every day, to be thankful about it. I mean, you were alluding to the fact that even what I'm doing now, who would have thunk it? I mean, my budget, JB, you mean you're on?
Who would have thunk it?
You're involved in clergy matters at your church, But you know what? I thoroughly enjoy it, because as opposed to just always going around giving motivational speeches to corporations and the like, there are things that are far more important, that are eternal in nature, if you will, that I enjoy trying to pour into people that way. And I've operated by those same principles. So I'm not articulating something that I don't know. I'm articulating what I do know.
And you believe in it.
No. Absolutely.
You live it.
Actively engage. Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, when they sponsored a trip, he and Israel's ambassador to the U.S., Ron Dermer, went over 2 years ago to take a group of Hall of Famers. Ambassador Dermer had visited Canton, the Hall of Fame. He said, wow, you know what? Sports has always been used as a method of advancing things in society. Why not have these athletes and their wives go over to Israel to see for themselves what Israel is all about, and have them be ambassadors, as opposed to the news only being filtered through the news media? And I was humbled that Robert Kraft asked me to be the sole correspondent to go over there and cover it. So my wife and I went there with the group 2 Junes ago. So Robert Kraft says, my plane's not big enough to carry a crew of 60 people. So he calls Sheldon Adelson, the mogul in Las Vegas, and borrows one of his 22 747 double-decker customized planes. Talk about traveling. An awesome experience. And Robert Kraft and I have talked so much because he's very engaged in activities that stress togetherness and the fellowship of Christians and Jews. It was a fascinating trip.
Isn't that a wonderful
That was
thing?
yes,
exposed
indeed.
to that culture.
Wonderful, and I'm so thankful to have done it and put together a nice piece that was shown on CBS Sports Network, detailing what that trip was all about and how spiritually moving it was to folks. But Andy, you talk about applying those things in the game of life. When I got released by CBS the first time around, when CBS lost a lot of inventory, lost the NFL contract, the NFC contract to Fox, and CBS was trying to get the AFC contract.
That was a blow when it went to Fox.
Big blow. 1994, absolutely. And NBC had the AFC deal. My boss had me on the phone calling everybody that I knew to try to see if we could get the other contract, the AFC contract. Didn't happen. Effectively, I'm out of a job because I was going to be doing the NBA show Inside Stuff, with which Ahmad Rashad got, but that went to NBC. When we lost the NFL, big blow. We had baseball, lost that. So not much inventory. New president comes in. I'm not necessarily the flavor of the day. So what do? But that's where my faith came into play, when I stood on the faith foundation, which said that promotion cometh neither from the east, the west, nor the south, but God is a judge. He putteth down one and he sets up another. So I had to trust in him that all things will work out well. Andy, I was trying to get a job as an announcer on the 5th broadcast team at Fox. And as it turns out, as they're going through the audition process, because the boss, David Hill, wanted to have a radically different show with Terry Bradshaw, Howie Long, and Jimmy Johnson, kind of 3 guys just sitting around kicking it. But the strength that I brought to the table that they didn't have there, after they went through a series of interviews and auditions, they wanted Mike Tirico, who ultimately now is a Thursday Night Football voice, and he's going to be the face of a lot of their inventory quite a bit now, and he's a terrific announcer. I get the opportunity to come over to co-host the show. I'm looking to become the 5th team announcer, and they asked me to come co-host with Terry.
Spot.
And what an absolute blessing. So again, I go at it with the same vim and vigor to do it excellently as unto the Lord in everything that I do. If I do it well that way, they can't help but be pleased.
Well, it's proven to be the number one show on Sunday. No matter what CBS has done, they have never competed with you. ABC's out of the box. And now you probably read what's happened with this downsizing of ESPN.
I know.
They are letting a lot of people go. You know what happened, JB? They spent too much money for rights, and they can't pay for them.
Well, as a
advertising's
businessman,
not there.
As a businessman, I'm sure you saw the handwriting on the wall.
Had to
so,
be. You can't keep paying those rights figures. There's only so many advertising dollars, and there ain't going to be any more.
So, again, coattailing and capitalizing on your business experience, I would truly hope, unless ownership of these teams are looking at another medium that's going to be able to pay out these continually rising rights fees, that a partnership arrangement really has to be in place if you're going to keep them on over-the-air TV, where you still get the largest audiences. Because, as you said, ESPN before was getting it on both ends. They were getting subscription and advertising dollars, and it's just not there anymore.
The subscriptions are drying up because of new technology, and they're scared to death of the cable business, which is their backbone, but it's going to change. And doesn't everything change, JB?
Yes,
Isn't it great?
Yes, sir.
Don't we live in a great country?
We do. But and I know I've overworked this expression,
no, you don't,
Andy, but the point is, as long as we stay abreast of the changes or ahead and deliver excellence at what you do, and hopefully this is encouraging to some of the young folks out there, just as you gave dispense that valuable piece of advice, be an excellent student in your core curriculum, and it's going to serve you well in the game of life.
No matter what you do.
Then just be excellent at it, and there's always going to be room for excellence. Matter of fact, I know my wife probably wouldn't mind me saying this one. It is, in the Bible it says, your gift will make room for you. Your talent will make room
always.
for you.
Yep, talent wills out, JB.
Yeah.
Like all the names and the people that you have talked about all in our lives, like bringing up Joe Yasharoff with his daughter, is big at the University of Maryland. All these guys that and you and I grew up with, they're still around. Isn't that great? And they still get together,
Awesome.
There's a group like we're all involved with the Hall of Fame that the learners underwrite that for us. But it's a lot of fun to see all those guys and be involved. And isn't it great? This is our town, JB.
You know what? And I'll let you
wrap up. You mentioned Mac in high school.
Hey, Mac
I haven't heard that name in 20 years.
Hey, but you know what? At the end of the day, what I see humbly through this, and all of those venerable names that you mentioned, and the kind of eras that we cross in this conversation, it's about family. At the end of the day, it is still family. And I hope that message resonates across a number of different circles. I mean, we can talk about political divisiveness and, are you left, right? Are you, centered on, you know what? It's family, because we're all shooting for the same goal and we're all a part of the same family. Let's do what's right.
You're a brilliant man, JB. We're all part of the great family. That's important.
No
and
question.
You're still number one in our town, because who else do we have that works for CBS? Your new compatriot is going to be a big important part of CBS, correct? Tony
Romo. Yes, he is. He might
be very good, incidentally.
You know what? He's got a challenge in front of him, but given what his success has been in the world of football, and that is a tough sport. John Madden was famous for saying, those guys who step across those white lines to play that game, those are tough competitors.
There ain't no minors in that league, baby.
No question about it. That's a serious game. So I have big respect, and I try to show that in the way I present the game as well, too. So he's got a golden opportunity. Those positions are very coveted. Not many of them there, but he's going to have to put the work in as well, too.
Right?
There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. But, Andy, let me close by just saying thank you. And your wife, I thank God for you guys. You guys are wonderful. You're a smart man because you've got her right there with you. The word says also, when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing. You found a great thing, Andy. So
we've gotten 55 done. Yeah. We're doing 40 at least more. Okay. We're going to present this to the local schools to say, let your students live in some of this. Let them listen to some of this our town, what it used to be. You want to hear Frank Herzog? Here he is. You want to hear JB? Here he is. You can punch it up and you can hear it in the car. You can hear it at home.
But do you know why that one of the reasons why that's so important? In Eastern cultures, there's a reverence and respect for that and those who've gone before you. We are such a microwave-oriented society now. We skew in terms of, and nothing wrong with it, but understand that there's some seasoning that needs to be there too. We skew so much toward things that are young. but that also can connote inexperience. Here's a concept that I think applies. In the world of sports, any coach, manager, GM, owner, in looking to build a team that's a consistent winner, you have to have a good cadre of young folks coming in, good talent, get it. But they are most successful when you've got a seasoned, still producing veteran to show them how it's done, what a professional is all about, the good work habits and the like. That's what's important. And what you're doing with this treasure here, that speaks to that.
Thank you, JB. We feel that way, too. Mm-hmm. This has been Our Town. Andy Ockershausen and JB, and how much we owe to him for being part of Our Town.
Mutual.
You've been listening to Our Town, Season 2, presented by Geico, our hometown favorite, with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. Drop us a line with your comments or suggestions. See us on Facebook or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks to Ken Hunter, our technical director, and WMAL Radio in Washington, D.C. for hosting our podcast. And thanks to Geico. 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance.